All right. So I was having this conversation with a client who is prepping for a giant interview this week. And she's got all the right answers, all the right messaging points, all of the things are aligned, but the confidence level is just not
Mhm.
not quite packing the punch that we need it to. And so, we of course talked about, rehearsing and making sure that it doesn't feel scripted anymore. And these are just things that are you can inherently talk about. But I know in your interview practice, you talk a lot about some other ways you can build that confidence. What are the number one thing that somebody can do
Mm.
going into an interview that is going to help them with that confidence in their delivery?
Good question. And I would say the number one thing is how they set up from a mindset standpoint before the interview even starts. Because how you show up, it's just like anything else. If you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, that's going to affect your whole day unless you turn that around. And going into an interview, a lot of people are kind of anxious. So you got to figure out like what is your thing that turns your mindset. Um, and it's different for everybody. So for some people, I recommend like figure out your superhero pose. If it's the Superman pose, if it's
Yep.
your Wonder Woman and you've got your gold bracelets, or you've got kind of the He-Man thing, whatever it is, whatever is your Superman pose. And you don't even have to actually physically do it, although it's better if you can. It could be just like in your head you're doing it. So find your thing. I will tell you my thing. I know this is going to sound really stupid, but back in the days when I used to interview, or I would go to a client meeting at a company, and just your vocal cords might not quite be warmed up yet. I
Yes.
I would find a song and I would just shout it out. Now, if I didn't have like something teed up, on now it would be Spotify, but back then it was probably my CD
A
or something like
mixtape.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I would sing the Star Spangled Banner because it's a hard song to sing and you can belt it out. And so I would be like driving down 880 and I'm singing the Star Spangled Banner and I'd
Oh
pull
my
into a
God.
parking lot and I'm blaring it out. But people have like, what is your stage song? Like, what is your
Sure. Yeah.
walkout song? Like, figure
Yep.
out what that thing
Mine.
is.
Yep. Mine is Eminem's Lose Yourself or the main song from The Greatest Showman. So, we maybe need a playlist of
Right.
Eminem, Hugh Jackman, and the Star Spangled Banner to hype people up. I love it. But yeah, you need something that's going to help you give you that confidence. And like studies show that you do need to warm up your voice. If you have a
Mhm.
meeting in the morning, your voice is not warmed up, same way any other muscle is. It can not be the first thing that comes out of your mouth is saying hello in an interview. You've got to warm yourself up a little bit.
Exactly right. So that's you asked what was the number one. So I would say you start with that for sure is that you have something that gets your mindset in the right place. Other things I would say, I'm always telling people like, look, you already kind of won a lottery because there are thousands of people applying for jobs. And if you got the interview, you've already beat out all these other people and they want to hire somebody. They do not want to interview more people. They want
Mhm.
you to be the greatest thing. So you're already walking in with a lot of things on your side. I think we worry that we're going to walk into the interview and it's all about scrutinizing it. And there is a point in the interview where you're going to get the harder questions for sure, where you have to talk about all the things where things went wrong and your worst day and what have you. But just remember that every step of the process, they've invited you. It's not like you just like crashed their party. They've invited you in. And so there's already a win in that. But when it comes down to actually answering the interview questions, I know you and I have talked about this. You got to prepare. You got to know that job
Totally.
description, know your resume. There are a lot of tools that you and I talk about in our coaching, in our community about how do you prepare for an interview? How do you really dissect that job description? How do you look at your resume and start to think, what are they going to like about me? What are the gaps that they might be pulling out? Like, how do I kind of insert these things? So you have to do that kind of homework, but in the moment, when you're asked a question, it is easy to feel like you have to jump in and answer it really fast. And that's what the sign of confidence is. Sometimes confidence, sometimes it's just taking a break for a second. They ask the question, you go, That's a great question. I know I've got a couple of answers for that. What would be the best one? And like your computer brain is like on fire at this point, and you're like, what's the best one? Well, let me tell you about such and such. Or give them a choice, which kind of stalls too. Like, I've got one that happened this last year, kind of interesting. I've got one that's kind of a probably even a better one, but it's older. It's 5 or 6 years, ago. But do you have a preference of which one you'd want
Mhm.
me to share with you? You've just bought yourself 20 seconds just in that, which doesn't sound like a lot, except it is a lot with your computer brain that is processing all of these and thinking of the stories and how would I lay them out and how do I want to talk about them. And sometimes those little stall tactics creates engagement, slows down your blood pressure a little bit, gives you time to think and prepare, maybe even gets buy-in from the other person about what, story you're going to tell. It certainly tells them that you have more than one story. So when you can do that, those things can really help. Um, One last thing that I want to tack onto this. You didn't ask the question, but I'm going to tack it on. And that is, what if you kind of blunder in the interview and you think that maybe you answered the question kind of going off in the wrong direction or you did something wrong? I think there are two times when you can come back and usually kind of recover. And that can be at the end of the interview when they ask you if you have more questions. You might have a question, but before you ask the question, you might say, I have a question, but before I do that, I really want to go back to when we were talking about X. And there was something, I think it could be, I think you were asking about this and I answered that wrong. And I want to acknowledge that. And if we have time, I'm happy to go into like a better example to give you. Or it could be, you say, when I was talking about that, I left something out. And this is a really important point, and I want to bring that up. You can do that at the end of the interview, and it shows self-awareness, that emotional intelligence. So it's actually a really good win to do that. If for some reason you don't get that in at the end of the interview, that's something that's great to insert into your thank you note that you're going to send a few hours later. And of course, that's something that we can always, help guide people on how to do that. But that's a lot of answers to your one single
I love it.
question.
Nope, I love it. It's so important because we think it's really easy to get lost in the research. It's easy to get lost in the preparation, but at the end of the day, that preparation is useless if you can't combine it with delivery.
Mhm. Right.